Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Let's make sure everything is streaming just fine. Sorry for being 6 minutes late, by the way. A little bit of a frog in my throat at the moment. Are we streaming on Facebook? We'll look at that later. Because we do not seem to be streaming on Facebook right now. Are we live? We're live on that channel. What about on this channel? Are we live? Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. We mostly have to fix Facebook streaming because it is not quite as good as the other. No need for that, sir. No need for that. And how about on Twitch? We are good. Excellent. It's mostly Facebook that's acting up because you need to make a new key every time, which is fucking annoying. Excuse the language. All right. Bookface. Live video. Go live. No, not virtual Canada. Virtual camera. That. I don't know why that just happened. Boom. Oh wait, streaming software. Duh. All right, and then edit that key. Save. How about now? Is that good? There we go. There you go. And the title of the stream, we're on Atheist Podcast, episode 2. Bear with me. We are interviewing Steve Alquist. It is still connecting the live video for some reason. Copy. Settings. Oh my god, it is frozen. That's the best. Hello, anyone in here? How are you doing today? What a lovely Sunday afternoon that we find ourselves in. And it seems to have found that amazing. It needs me to type in the description again. All right, go live. Man, I hate Facebook. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live on all sites, which means we can get started. Greetings, atheists, agnostics, humanists, skeptics, sinners, heathens, blasphemers, non believers, friends, allies, and supporters. Was that long enough for you? My name is Jonathan Carney, and this is the Round Atheist Podcast. Sorry for the delay this morning, afternoon, whichever. For today's show, we're going to discuss LGBTQ rights in Rhode Island, and we're also going to have a wonderful guest speaker, a local independent reporter by the name of Stephen Alquist. You might have heard of him. But first, some updates for our organization. Rhode Island Atheists is a nonprofit organization with a twofold mission, providing a safe, comfortable environment for non-believers to connect, network, express themselves, do activism, hold little meetings in libraries, all those wonderful things. Ain't no one who needs to see that. And fighting for religious freedom and separation of church and state in our state, and by extension, LGBTQ rights and reproductive freedom, because a lot of the times people like to use their religion to fight against LGBTQ rights. Thank you, Spambot on Kick. By the name of Parental Godfather DJY, but there are no gods here, so you can take that back with you. I'm just kidding. We had a busy last year. We're continuing full steam ahead this year in 2026. Our largest endeavor is the celebration of the Rhode Island Day of Reason, which falls on May 6th. We'll talk more about that in another show as it gets closer. But for now, set your calendars for the Day of Reason ceremony on Wednesday, May 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the State House. Coming up this month, we will be at the State House on Tuesday for the start of the Rhode Island legislative session, representing, holding up signs, and reminding our elected officials that we are still watching. Please contact us to RSVP. Also, our first general meeting of the year takes place on Tuesday, January 13th at 6:30 p.m. Contact us for the location, meeting details, and to RSVP. Also, just a reminder that at the end of our show, you can call into our Discord and we'll chat with you live on air. The link is going to be posted in the description, which I will do right now. Once you connect to our server, you can join the waiting room and we'll pull in callers when we're ready. Let me switch to the Rhode Island Atheist Discord account. Our topic for today is LGBTQ rights and equality in Rhode Island. Providence has once again earned a perfect score on the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index, the MEI, a distinction that is maintained since 2014, which is when I graduated high school. Damn. Impressive. According to safehome.org, only 8 states received A grades for LGBTQ safety based on their comprehensive pro-equality laws and low rates of hate crimes against LGBT people. Only Rhode Island nabbed an A+ mark. We're special that way. The smallest, but the mightiest. Rhode Island Pride draws massive crowds, and with organizers consistently reporting over 125,000 participants, making it one of the best Pride celebrations in the country. For state laws, we have a lot of non-discrimination laws. State law explicitly prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression in employment, housing, credit, healthcare, and public accommodations. That makes Dave Chiradio very mad, I promise you. Same-sex marriage and family rights. Same-sex marriage has been legal in Rhode Island since August 1st, 2013. Same-sex couples have the same rights regarding adoption and parentage as opposite-sex couples. The Rhode Island Uniform Parentage Act, effective January 2021, ensures that all intended parents, including LGBTQ individuals and couples, can establish legal parentage without having to go through a potentially expensive and time-consuming second parent adoption process. For conversion therapy, that dangerous practice on minors has been banned since 2017 because it's basically torturing people with no actual results. So, But when you are a religious person, unfortunately, that thinks that LGBT people are all fake and they're all just, being blasphemous, then you tend to hurt people in your crusade to make them act just like you think they should have to act. And that's not very good now, is it? School environment. Rhode Island law and Department of Education regulations require public schools to provide a safe, supportive, and non discriminatory environment for all students, including transgender and gender nonconforming students, and prohibit bullying based on characteristics like sexual orientation and gender identity, or really bullying at all. Transgender rights. Transgender individuals are protected under state law and can update their name and gender markers on official documents, such as birth certificates and driver's licenses, without surgery requirements. Hate crimes. State law includes sexual orientation and gender identity as protected categories under hate crime legislation, allowing for enhanced penalties for crimes motivated by prejudice. Ron House of Representatives passed a resolution last year in 2025 affirming solidarity and support for LGBTQ community, especially in these trying times. Rhode Island Atheists joined our partners in a sign on letter endorsing this resolution. In 2024, Rhode Island Atheists worked with our community partners in helping pass the Healthcare Provider Shield Act, protecting medical providers who treat LGBT folks from who protect them from persecution and prosecution. In 2025, our organization was heavily involved in helping pass the Freedom to Read Act, fighting back against book bans and protecting librarians from persecution. Those poor librarians. Yeah, we gotta make sure that the conservatives don't bully them as they like to do. I think didn't they try to jail one in one state? I don't think it was this state, but it was crazy stuff. Anyway, equality is at the core of Rhode Island Atheist vision as an organization. We proudly work with local partners like Pride in Aging and Youth Pride in defending LGBT rights in our state. Despite our state's high standards, local school committees have become civil rights battlegrounds. Christian nationalists associated with groups like Moms for Liberty and Turning Point have spent the last few years crusading against LGBT students, seeking to overturn state protections. Rhode Island Atheists has worked closely with the Women Project and other community allies in fighting back, showing up, and giving testimony. Now, let me make sure, now that we've gone through the topic of the day, the LGBT rights, let me make sure that we have the Discord link in the live broadcasts so that if people want to join after the Steve Alquist interview, they can. To join for viewer call-ins after the interview, join the Discord at boom boom. Let me throw in all of these. No one said to unmute. I don't want to listen to myself back. Thank you very much. Hey, Joe, are you in here? Are you in chat? And do you know when you mean for Stephen Alquist to be coming on for our lovely interview today? Is he joining the Discord at some point? I do have an article I wanted to read that can also eat up some time. Not that it will be eating up because it will be so fun, but you know what I mean. Let me go to this account and also share that link to the Discord so that anyone viewing on here can also join. Okay, thank you. Can I post a message in my own chat, please? Thank you for cooperating. Now, this is a article from the Maine Supreme Court that I wanted to look at. Good, it's muted. Let's see if this is set up right. Yep, yep, yep. This was published by Friendly Atheist on December 9th. It's too bad it was already after the first show. I wanted to read this. Turking My Charlie. Hi, since you're an atheist, do you say, may Darwin evolve you instead of bless you? I haven't up to this point, but that is a good idea. I will start doing that immediately. Thank you. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Kick viewers. Will the Maine Supreme Court allow a mother to keep harming her daughter with religion? This was a parental dispute where the father didn't appreciate the negative effects that a certain, like, very cult like subsection of Christianity that the mother was bringing her to. And so the court was actually brought in to mediate the dispute. Okay, we have some anti Semitism in the chat. Let me go take care of that. Get out of here, freak. Ban. Get out of here, freak. Oh, thank you for unmuting that. All right, so I banned him. Delete the chats. Oh no, the chats are still. Do you also say Christmas tree or evolution tree? We actually say the Saturnalia tree. We have to make sure that we please the god Saturn and Dionysus and all those lovely people as we celebrate our lovely winter pastime. All right. The Maine Supreme Court will soon decide whether a father has a right to veto which church the mother takes their child to, a move that the mother says would infringe upon her religious rights. This woman just looks like a crazy person. The case involves Matthew Bradeen, Emily Bickford, and their 12-year-old daughter, Ava. When the parents separated over a decade ago, they were never married. They agreed to share parental rights and responsibilities regarding religious education and upbringing. And none of that appeared to be a problem until 2021, when Bickford began taking Ava to Calvary Chapel, a church in Portland, Maine. I had to recorrect my mind, not Oregon, Maine. Brodeen soon noticed some major changes in Ava, harmful ones, and asked the judge to modify their parenting agreement so that he could have control over Ava's religious upbringing. That's a big ask, obviously, and he needed some damn good reasons for a judge to sign off on his wishes. But in 2024, that's precisely what a Maine District Court judge did. In an 18-page ruling, Judge Jennifer Knopfsinger laid out all the reasons Bradeen's argument was compelling and why he deserved to have control of Ava's religious upbringing. The justification boiled down to a few major issues. The church's teachings were frightening and psychologically harmful. The pastor routinely delivered fire and brimstone sermons, vividly describing hell, full of burning and torment, and focused on the book of Revelations, talking about the reign of the Antichrist. All of this scared the shit out of Ava. She started having panic attacks, trying to convert her father, and asking her dad why he wasn't going to heaven with her. All of this, Bradeen said, led to Ava experiencing fear and anxiety with the church's teaching. He's in the Discord? Okay, cool. We'll come back to the article later. I do not see him. Joe, I do not see him in the Discord. PC. What is his account? Also, if you could message me in chat so I see it right there. It didn't help that Ava went to the church a lot. There were services on weekdays and multiple services on Sunday. Can you imagine having to go every day? That would have driven me nuts. I hated going every week back when my parents brought me. Would have lost my mind if it was every goddamn day. Every goddamn day you have homework to do. You want some time to yourself as a kid after school, but no, you're going to fucking church for an hour and then doing homework. And then what are you doing afterwards? Playing outside? I don't think so. That would have been nuts. So the waiting room vanished. No, it probably got renamed to. No, it's right here. The waiting room vanished. What's his account? You you probably clicked the little carrot about. Can you talk to me in chat? Can respond verbally instead of texting during the thing. Hold on. Here it is. You see this? You probably clicked on this. Uh, Atomic Steve. Yeah, I don't see that account here. I see LGGEE, Rich Height, some bots, and then you. There, he's not. He's not in the Discord. Also, I look a little dark, don't I? I'm like in the shadows with my face here. I'm gonna keep reading this. His Discord name's Atomic Steve. Yeah, I don't see him there. He's not in the server. He has to use the invite link. The invite link's above in the chat. Do you see it? I can put it in again. Well, you're looking at a Facebook stream, right? It's in there in the comments. All of which there were services on weekdays and multiple services on Sunday. All of which Bickford and Ava attend. What kind of sociopath goes twice on in one day? What are we doing here? On some of those Sunday, people just really need hobbies. Jesus Christ. On some of those Sundays, Ava had to listen as people testified about how Jesus saved them from sexual and physical trauma, gay and lesbian relationships, and infidelity. Despite all that, some of those guys got caught cheating on their wives, and then they had to say that Jesus saved them. Anyway, despite all that, Bradine never let Ava think her mother was wrong or brainwashed. He just taught Ava that different people believed different things, and that he simply didn't agree with what that church taught. He's not even an atheist. He's just like, please stop, like, scarring my daughter with your abusive, like, hell and brimstone sermons. Bickford hid from Bradine. That's the mother. The mother is Bickford, and Bradine's the father. Bickford hid from Bradine how much she was indoctrinating her daughter. Bickford once told Bradine she was taking Ava out of school to visit the state capitol, but that was a lie. She and Ava attended an anti-abortion protest. Bringing your 12. Well, I guess both sides bring their 12-year-olds, I guess, to do political battle against each other at protests. She also sent Ava to a church-sponsored overnight retreat without telling him. Weird. Bradine wasn't told the location, and Ava wasn't allowed to have a phone there. That's a good sign. So he couldn't communicate with her as it happened. At another point, Bickford was on the verge of baptizing Ava without telling Bradine. If this was my kid, by the way, and the mother was going to baptize her without my consent, I'd be going to jail in a video game. That's not. We're not doing that. He only found out through a third party. Yep. That's how it be. when your custody agreement says both parents have shared control over the daughter's religious upbringing, those are all things that should have discussed together. They had a custody agreement already because they had been separated. Why? Because the woman was a fucking psychopath. No offense. Jesus. But even when Bertine was on his own, Bickford forced her religion into the picture anyway. She sent Ava to his house with more religious paraphernalia than typical. She's trying to get back with him, but first she has to convert him, or they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to be together. Aha! I see him. Okay, so he is in the voice channel. So we will get back to this article later. Wow, what a roller coaster it's been so far. Oh, also my questions. That would be good, wouldn't it? Shit. Where do I stick those? Not in Notepad, not in Word. Why I just have them in my damn Messenger? That's the only place I have them. I swear I like put them in a document, but this will do fine. Just 1 second, and we shall begin the interview. Right now. Wait. Roll cleared. Move to live chat. And I see you had your video up. Hold on.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's all right. Hold on. Let me
Right.
go bring you here. You might have to put it back up again because I moved you to the correct room after giving you the role.
Let me see what I got here. Let's see what we got. Here we go.
Hello.
That working?
Yes. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I can't see you, if that matters.
Oh yeah, I can
Doesn't
try.
matter. I mean, just make sure,
If I do that, it sometimes messes with my camera because it's trying to use. It's both the stream is using it and you.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm good either way.
Nice. You have a lot of books behind you.
Yeah, this is my office, and I try to avoid being here because I get very distracted by my shit.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, how are you doing this fine afternoon?
Really good. Really good. Sorry for the connection troubles. I, kind of new at this, so.
That's all right. Yeah, Discord. A lot of people are when they're new to Discord. It takes them a couple of tries to find the right place to be.
I think what it was is I was in a different Rhode Island atheist Discord. You have two of them,
We
and I
do?
was on one. So
Huh? I didn't know we had two of them. Uh-oh. We'll have to
I'm now looking for two different Rhode Island atheist Discords.
we'll have
So
to hunt down the duplicate and figure out
yeah,
where that came from.
yeah,
All right. Well, I wanted to ask you. So, Jessica Alquist was your niece, is that right? What was it like to have a Rhode Island State Representative, Peter Palumbo, call your teenage niece an evil little thing because she didn't want a Christian banner in her public school?
yeah. It was amazing because, well, it worked against him because an evil little thing. She just adopted that as her motto, right? And used it and didn't worry about it too much. But honestly, the real thing was it was an early example in my life of the lack of professionalism that some members of the Rhode Island General Assembly have when it comes to dealing with issues they don't understand or don't appreciate.
Right.
Right? I mean, Peter Palumbo, he eventually he left public service shortly after that. You know, not under the greatest circumstances. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but they weren't the greatest circumstances. And he was and the stuff he said on the John DePietro show was just really not great. I did meet him like later, and I will say that he kind of pulled back from that. And I don't know that he apologized, but he certainly wasn't um, sticking to what he said. Right. So
Yeah.
I think he was saying what he had to say to like impress certain segments of his audience, maybe, or for his political career. I don't want to say he's not a bad guy. I don't want to say he's a good guy. I just want to say that he seemed to, when directly talked to about it, kind of pull back a little bit. So whatever, for whatever that's worth.
That's interesting. I didn't realize it was on the John DePietro show. Man,
Yeah,
that guy has his hands in everything apparently. And
yeah, he did. I mean, he's less of influential now, but at the time, he was the guy who was, I think, in the public driving the negative public discourse the most.
he was driving during the Mary Brimer stuff. He was driving the litter box story with them,
Yes, he
and
was. This
as
is who he is.
yeah, as well as more recently with Anthony D'Elena, trying to sue the what was it, JWU professor who was behind a parody account making fun of Ashley
Right.
Kalis. He was there too. He's like
Yeah,
he's always up to something. And
yeah,
yeah,
it's his thing. I mean, he's a right wing operative more than anything else, and not always an honest player. I think because he doesn't like it when people do to him or his issues what he does routinely to other people. Right. So
yeah, funny with
helping somebody to sue over a parody account is like okay, but also going after a 16-year-old high school student, like he had no problem doing that. Right.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's the same to my mind. It's two sides of the same coin, and it grows both ways. So
exactly.
yeah,
The Pierre Palumbo guy was actually I was reading criminally convicted later for misusing campaign funds. How
yeah, he used it for his clam shack business down in the uh down at the beaches. He had something to do with their maybe he was cleaning or I can't remember what it was, but he had a contract down there, and he was misappropriating funds to do that. So
womp, womp,
yeah,
womp.
and then he got replaced, and now he's gone. He's gone, right? So I mean, you don't hear about him as a public servant anymore. And this is what happens to a lot of people who do really egregious or awful things. They later be found to be stealing or to be in some other way morally or ethically compromised. If you're, it's one of those things. Uh, make sure your house is in order before you start throwing stones. I think that's
Right.
not a phrase, but you know what I'm saying, right? Be
Yeah.
good about that because if you don't have the moral high ground, don't pretend you do because it's going to make you look twice as bad when you get caught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because the banner that was the genesis for all of that was blatantly illegal in public schools, and there was really no argument to be had about it. But yet there
Right.
was so much backlash and so much harassment from normal people and from representatives from the other side. I
Yeah.
read that there were death threats and that florists were refusing to sell your niece flowers. What do you
The
think causes people to dig
flowers
their
coming
heels in?
from
What'd you say?
the flowers that did get to her were coming from a florist just across the border in Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
And there was a nice florist who would do it, but local florists wouldn't do it. So nationally, people are trying to send her flowers, and they were coming from one florist in Connecticut who was at this time. I haven't seen him in a while, but it was a lovely couple and just an amazing store. We drove out to visit and say thank you because it was such a nice thing for them to do.
Yeah, it's a nice gesture for sure.
Yeah, it was cool.
What do you think causes people to dig their heels in so viciously on an issue they're just like flat out wrong on?
Well, you can be flat out wrong on an issue, but what you're mostly hoping to do in these cases is to push it in the public sphere and then hopefully get a court case that you can take all the way to the Supreme Court and get the Supreme Court to maybe reverse their previous decision. Right now it's illegal because of Supreme Court cases that came down and made that kind of mixing illegal. But if that same case today were to go to this Supreme Court, are you confident they would say that's a mixture of church and state, or that this court would care? Right. So this is
Not with
what
this card.
is happening in Rhode Island right now. There are people who are pushing anti-trans um, uh, efforts in school boards and school committees across the state. 3 or 4 different school committees have been considering these things. And the reason they're doing it isn't because, they think that Rhode Island state law is going to be reversed or that they have the right to break the law. What they're hoping is to get a case they can bring all the way to the Supreme Court and then eliminate that right entirely. And so that's what they were trying to do here. Like, even when they won the prayer banner case in Rhode Island, the way they won that was there was a ruling, right, from the court. She was clearly in the right, Constitution, everything else. And then at a school committee meeting, the school committee debated whether or not to appeal that to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. And that would have cost a whole bunch of money. I mean, they already spent lots of money. I can't remember the totals, but it was like, I think it was in the $100,000 range.
Yeah.
And they wanted to spend more money to, like, basically take it to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. Even if they lost there, which they most likely would have, they were hoping to bring it to the Supreme Court, the National Supreme Court, and then overrule the previous rulings against having things like prayer in school. So, the idea, though, was does Cranston school system want to spend all the money it takes to reverse a policy that A, kind of makes sense, and B, will cost them a lot of money and have national implications, but is that really what Cranston wants to be known for? At the time, politically speaking, I think it was a bad move, but I think if the same thing would happen today, they may have made a different decision.
Yeah,
They
they
may have
would push it all the way. Yeah.
and I would think they would, unfortunately, possibly win. I don't know if this Supreme Court would uphold the Constitution in that case.
Yeah.
We have a president who's like literally saying that if you're not a Christian, you're not an American. I mean,
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
like crazy, and obviously wrong, obviously untrue, obviously not in the spirit of what our Constitution or what America's about. But they don't care. They're playing a whole new game. So that was the danger then. I think it's a bigger danger now. The prayer banner's down, but that prayer banner was cut out of the wall, which is ridiculous. All right, here's the thing: it's painted onto a wall.
Oh.
To preserve it, they cut it out of the wall. They wrapped it in a box and they put it in a, basically, I don't want to call it a secret underground bunker, but they put it into a right. It's like the Lost Ark of the Covenant at the end of Indiana Jones. They literally boxed it up. I saw a picture of it boxed up and then placed inside this warehouse somewhere. Maybe thinking that down the road they'll pull it out and put it back up.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. All they had to do was paint over it. They didn't have to spend thousands. It was like one dude with a ladder could have painted it. They literally cut it out of the wall, replaced a section of the wall in the middle of this auditorium.
Cutting off their nose to spite their face.
And I mean, how much money, right? I mean, pay a guy $29 an hour to do it, spend 4 hours doing it, or you pay like a moving company and architects and all this in re-bricking it. I mean, think about a school wall. It's just nothing but cinder blocks. They had to replace and cut and do. It was a 3-day job, and it was like lots of money they spent.
That's crazy.
Fraud,
waste, and abuse much. Where's my Doge?
Right? In one sense, it's kind of interesting it's been preserved, because I'll sometimes think it would be cool to pull it out, put it into a museum, and talk about how we fought for our rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I think that would be cool.
But that's not why they're doing it.
No, that's not why they're doing it, right? I would love to see it displayed with a contextual, in a museum with a context that says, here's how we preserve our rights of separation of church and state. Something, by the way, that Rhode Island was founded on. Rhode Island was the very first government anywhere in the world to establish freedom of religion.
Yeah.
Right? Before that, it was only an idea some people had. Roger Williams made that idea real in Rhode Island. And that idea was so strong that we incorporated parts of it into our Constitution. And that's why we have the freedoms we have today. And that's why liberal democracies across the world, and liberal democracies are vanishing, sadly, but liberal democracies across the world have done the same. Even European countries that technically have a state religion, they allow other religions there, and they have a broad tolerance for other points of view because they understand the importance of not persecuting people for their religion, right? Because how much horror has been done in the name of that is, terrible, terrible cost to people. If you look at the most extreme example, Nazi Germany, but we can see that throughout the world. We can see it even happening today. We can see people being persecuted for their religious beliefs in China, Russia, probably Venezuela right now. Who knows? But it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
So eliminating that's anyway. That's I think that's why it's been preserved so they can maybe someday put it back up,
Right.
and our job would be to prevent that from happening.
Definitely. Now, you're an independent journalist. Have you ever had
Yes.
an interest in traditional media, or why did you choose to go the independent route?
I didn't want an editor. I didn't want to be told what stories to cover. I wanted to cover the stories I want to cover.
Right.
I don't think people. I don't think an independent. I worked for the Providence Journal. I don't think they would say, "Yeah, spend days and days and days writing about the rights of transgender students in places like Westerly."
Right.
I don't think they would care. Plus, they wouldn't want me spending days and days and days and like essentially in a way telling the same story over and over and over again.
Right.
Because when I go to Westerly or go to Smithfield or I go to some other part of the state where they're discussing these issues, it's Gloucester, for instance, it's essentially the same story. Um, a small number of people, actually, it's the same people in the state who are right wing, um, transphobic, ultra right wing Christians, Christian nationalists. They are working in any place they can to advance anti-trans narratives, um, so that they can take this to the Supreme Court, as I mentioned. But the idea is the journal doesn't want to spend the money to do that work because they look at it as one story. This is happening. Good job, Steve. We're done. And then they won't revisit it for a year. I'm able to, as an independent journalist, do that story whenever it comes up, wherever it comes up, however it comes up. And I spend my time doing it. And I have a following of people who like the work I do. And they, support me the same way they might support NPR to do this work on a local level so that they understand what's happening. No one can track a school, every school system in the state. And I have trouble doing it. And I have people
Right.
on the back end who help me do that. It's not a thing I can do alone. I have people who read through all the agendas for all these different meetings. And they might say to me, "Hey, I'm doing it too," but they'll say, "Hey, Steve, notice this." I'm like, "Oh, thank you for noticing that because I'm busy, so busy writing, covering stuff. I can't always do the research I need to know where to be." So I have
Yeah.
a lot of help doing that background, and I don't know that I don't know that any media in Rhode Island would want me to do that. I'll tell
Right.
one other story about
Yeah.
that. um, I was asking when some news crews, they're like from, I don't know, 6, 10, 12, whoever it was. I was saying, I go out to these school committee meetings and there's all sorts of dramatic things being said. There's all sorts of dramatic things being heard. There's kids talking about their lives. There's parents defending their transgender children. There are Christian nationalists out there attacking these children.
Yeah.
And that stuff feels like it would work on TV, right? Take a quote here and there and put it together and turn it into a story. And I'm like, why wouldn't you be there recording that stuff? The reason being, or at least one guy told me, the reason is at night after 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, all the news crews have one news truck on duty.
Yeah.
And they need to be somewhere around Providence just in case there's a shooting or a fire.
Right.
Right? It's the if it bleeds, it leads form of journalism. They want to be outside with a fire and flames in the air, or they want to be outside when there's bullet casings on the ground and chalk outlines of people who are being shot. They want to talk about that stuff. They don't want to talk about human rights or the rights of individuals or the dramatic stuff that can happen. This applies not only to like trans rights. This applies to things like gas pipelines or people who are anti-wind,
Right.
right? These people who are anti-science. They're people out there doing all this work at night at these various little meetings that you never hear about, and the news crews won't go there because they need to be in Providence just in case there's gang violence or a house fire. And that to me says, what is the news concentrating on? Gang
Exactly.
violence is an issue. House fires are an issue, but are house fires a systemic issue? And if they are, isn't the story really what is the systemic issue that causes so many houses to catch on fire? What is the systemic issues that cause gang violence? But we don't cover it from that. We cover it as two people were shot in a car, blah blah blah, and we
Right.
don't cover it as poverty, gang violence, kids not having access to good jobs or education, or hopeless lives that lead to crime and desperation and shootings. That's a story. The story isn't some random dude shot some random dude and terrible things are happening. That's just fear mongering. It's not really news, and it's not really what we need to be doing as journalists. So anyway, that's the operational reason it happens, and that's why I like to maintain my independence, because I want to be able to not do a story about a random shooting. I want to do a story about real people having real issues and their rights being assaulted on a day-to-day basis. And the onus right now, the shift of the world is towards Christian nationalism, at least in America, and standing up to that, and at least at the very least, not even standing up, but at least documenting that, seeing where it's happening, letting people know this is what's happening. I think that's some of the most important work you can do right now as a journalist, and I would love to see more people do it.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that was a very well thought out answer. Are there other independent journalists in the area you respect, or others you don't much care for?
Well, I don't. It's not so much I don't care for them. I do. They do their work differently, and I appreciate everybody who does the work. Right.
Yeah.
Even people who tend to be to the right of me. There are. I'll say Bill Bartholomew. I respect what he does very much. I think what Pat Ford does is really interesting and really good, and he tries to model his work on the way I do it, even though he has a slightly different approach in some ways on certain issues like ICE and homelessness. We are aligned very, very much, immigration and such. Uh, but there are other people out there who I think do really good work, even in the mainstream media. I think Eli Sherman over at Channel 12 does really good research, backup research, and just amazing work. I think there are people, Alexa Gagas over at the Boston Globe does really good work. There are people at the Journal. I think, you think about Kathy Gregg. I think she's to the right of me, politically speaking. At the same time, I think she's an astounding reporter. She's like an older woman who's been a reporter since at least the 70s. And she came up at a time when women weren't really getting a lot of respect. And I'll tell you, watching her at a press conference, press somebody, ask her questions, I learned just from watching her, because she'll ask the governor a question and the governor will go off in his dumbass way and say not answer the question,
Right.
and try to move on, and she just stops and says, excuse me, that doesn't answer my question, and she just presses them again.
Yeah.
And then when she's all done, somebody else is trying to raise a question, he wants to move on from her because she's tough, and she goes, well, I have a follow-up, and then she hits him with a follow-up. She doesn't take no for an answer. She's such a good reporter on that level. And again, even though she covers things from a slightly different place, nothing but respect for the work she does and how hard she does it. And there are reporters like that throughout the state. I'm not naming them all because I'm going to miss some in my head.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
independent or not independent, if you're doing the work and you're doing it well and you have some sense of the integrity of the work, then I think that you're welcome to it. Media reporting is it's more of like an environment or a landscape, and we all take turns, shots on goal, right? We all have different takes, but I need all that, like an ecosystem. I need all of them to do their work, and I'll do my work within that. But I don't do it to spite them or to be better than them. I do it because of the way I want to do it, because I think it's important, and hopefully they're doing the same. They're doing it because they think it's important.
Right.
Yeah,
So we talked about how traditional media, some of the limitations are they're maybe focused on the wrong things. They don't want to tell the same story multiple times. They don't have more than one news crew
right.
up after 6 p.m. Um,
Yep.
for independent media, you guys don't necessarily have a large team of researchers and fact checkers. So how do you keep yourselves accountable to like truthful report? How do you find the right information? How do you do all that despite being a smaller like entity?
You just work harder. I mean, really, I when I'm in the swing of it, and right now, this last week's been kind of slow for me because it's between Christmas and New Year. But starting tomorrow, Tuesday, even yesterday, I think, or Friday, I did like 4 stories that day. Right, I
Yeah,
wrote up 4 different things that happened. The thing is, I work when I'm in the zone. I work between 12 and 16 hours a day, almost 7 days a week. So
wow.
when I'm doing this, I'm doing the work constantly. I'm out there doing it. I When you see me at a press conference or you see me at an event covering it, when it's all over, I find a quiet place to sit down and write it,
Yeah,
and to edit the video and to edit the pictures and to put this all together and to make sense of it. I also like to quote people extensively in my work. I like to give, because I want to give voice to people. So it's not so much a matter of being correct on it. Like, I know the things that are happening, It's really about getting the opinions of people out there. It's true. And when I write a thing, it's like, okay, here's what people said, here's what people believe, here's what people did. It's not here's what the truth of the world is at any given moment, because that's not the job of a reporter to do.
Right.
When you think of, like, the reporting as the first draft of history, where are the people who are there, and we try to report accurately what happened, what people said, what were the attitudes at the time. Most of the stuff I cover from the center to the left, and I myself think I'm a left. I'm on very much so on the left,
Yeah.
right, politically speaking.
Right.
But I don't always agree 100% with everything everybody is saying. If you're in more to the center, I'm probably more to the left. If you're on the extreme, even if you're on the extreme left, I'm probably still to the left of you on several issues, right? And there's some things I just don't think are true. That's fine. I work with people who are religious because oftentimes our focuses are the same.
Yeah.
If you're religious and working on helping immigrants, or if you're helping trans kids or helping with the environment, I am your ally on those issues. We can have nice discussions afterwards over whether or not God exists, and that's fine. I mean, that stuff is, to my mind, less important. I don't
Right.
really care if God exists. I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, but the idea of whether or not there's a God, that's like us. That is, after all the other problems of the world are solved, we can talk about that one, right?
I
I
understand.
until then, who cares, right? God's like super powerful theoretically, so he's not sitting there hopefully thinking, "Oh, what is Steve doing?" He's thinking whatever thoughts he has. He'll
Some of the
project.
rich people want you to think that they
I
control
know
the.
they're funny.
He gives you a
Right,
green light at the traffic stop if he likes you. You know, that's what my
yeah,
grandma
right.
used to think or thinks. I think.
Well, I've lived long enough now to know that good people die young, and old, and bad people like live forever.
Yep.
And the opposite is also true. Bad people die young, and bad people. It's random, right?
Yeah.
It's not planned. It's not. That's how I believe, and that's fine. And you believe differently. Cool. We can still work together on the important issues. So what I'm trying to say is, the work is the work. You need to do the work. We have to help each other because no one else is helping us. And whether if I save your life, whether God somehow put me in the way of that fire and I ran into the house and I pulled you out, or I was just happened to walk by, it doesn't really matter. I'm doing what I have to do at the time to do the thing, and I don't really give a shit if it's
Right.
Kismet, fate, Buddha, God, Muhammad, whoever, whatever, or just random dumb luck. That's great. It works out for us. So
Yeah.
that's what I.
So we talked about traditional media. We talked about independent media, which is you.
Mhm.
Now I was wanted to ask you about your opinion on alternative media. Just random people, streaming services, YouTube, making videos, making content, not necessarily trained people, not
Yep.
necessarily, media trained people. And technically, if I were to cover the news, this would be what I would fall under. But
Mhm.
with the alternative media that people tend to be consuming today, do you see an issue with the lack of accountability for their reporting and to the truth that some of these alternative media people have?
Yeah, I think the difference between independent and alternative media is a very fine line. And really, what it comes down to is the professionalism and the philosophy behind the work you're doing. I mean, there's very little difference between me and what you might call alternative media in the way you defined it. But I think I try to bring a level of professionalism and integrity, and I back the words I say, right? I stand behind every piece I put out. I'm proud of all the work I do, and I hold myself to a very high standard when I do it. If you're doing this work and you have less high standards, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you should really be thinking all the time about what is the point of doing what you're doing. Too many people who are engaged in what the alternative media are doing is they're trying to influence the world in a way that might not be truthful, honest, or decent. And by that, what I mean is they may put out a story that says something like, I don't know, there's gang violence and kids are shooting each other. And the implication of that from what they're trying to sell is racist,
Right.
right? That they're somehow this gang violence is code for black and brown people engaging in violence in poverty. It's classist. It's all these things. I think, when you do it that way, you're not doing it honestly or for the right reasons. If you're really interested in those issues, and I meet people all the time who are interested in those issues, and those people, because they have an honest accounting and an honest take, have a very hard time getting their views out there.
Right.
Um, if you want to talk about, like, children being sick or poverty causing issues, they'll talk about, oh, look at these homeless people are on the street and they're knocking on my car window and they look scary and they're asking me for money. I wish they would, like, stop that. Could the police please do something about that? Instead of saying, why are all these people living on the street with no money? What can the government do to help them? They're saying, can you please make them go away? Can you
Right.
please send them somewhere where they can die outside my view so I don't have to feel guilty when I look at them? Or I don't have to feel scared when I see them. I don't. They should know. Should think about what makes the drug supply so dangerous for people who are addicted. What makes it so dangerous is it's illegal, so criminals fill that void with crappy drugs. But if the drugs were clean and legally available with all the kind of medical help that we could provide to help people work through the issues that cause dependency, then they wouldn't be on the street robbing people, knocking over cars, or breaking into your house to steal valuables to sell for drugs because they would be being taken care of in a way. So
I've
we can,
seen I've seen conflicting things. I think there's a Latin American country who tried the legalize, and well, I would kind of be for that if it was mandated that you get like treatment if you're like addicted and dying on the
they
street.
do that in Portugal right now, and they have some of the best outcomes in the entire country. Look up Portugal's
Portugal.
drugs.
Okay.
Yeah, Portugal does that, and their system. It isn't perfect because there's no perfect system, right?
Right.
If you're looking for perfect, then all I can say is it's way better than the way we do things in America. I can't say it's perfect because
Right.
there's just no way, right? People are people. We are There's no system in the world that we can devise that a person can't break, and there's no system in the world that can account for all the different ways that people can be shitty, right? We can come up with laws against banks robbing you, and banks immediately come up with new ways to rob you because there is an infinite number of ways to break every rule, and they're always looking for ways to do it. That's just the human nature, and that's the downside of being a person. But we can come up with better systems. And I'm not saying that my system that I suggested there, or Portugal system, is the best possible. There may well be other ideas here that could work better.
Yeah.
We just have to figure out what they are, and we need to use what I would consider to be science, reason, and compassion, right? To make that happen. We have to figure out how to help people make the best decisions, knowing also that they won't always make the best decisions. It's like raising a kid, right? You can give your kid every opportunity. And I mean, I was a kid and I did a whole bunch of dumbass things, right? Like every
Right.
kid
Right. Right.
does. And, it's not like I didn't know the right way to do things. I just said, well, I'm the first kid in the world who ever thought of this great new idea and how to do it. And then what did I do? I ended up breaking a window or running my car into a tree because I'm an idiot, because I'm a dumb kid.
Gotcha.
This is just the way it is, and it applies also to people as a whole. We need to come up with better ways to take care of people, and if we do that, we minimize the danger to each other, and we minimize the ways that those little mistakes we make will cause us to do terrible, catastrophic things. Right?
Yeah.
There will always be problems. There'll always, I mean, even if we were to somehow make a world that was incredibly egalitarian and no one had any reason to kill each other, there's still going to be the situation where two people fall in love with one person and there's violence between them because we're humans and that's the way we are.
Yep.
And if we can deal with that in a compassionate way, an understanding way, and work through those issues in a better way, we can reduce, not eliminate, even murder, right? We can reduce, not eliminate theft. We can reduce, not eliminate drug addiction. I'm not saying that we come up with the perfect system because I mean, I'm a realist and I know that doesn't happen. We
Yep.
can reduce, not eliminate, probably things like cancer and all the other different illnesses in the world if we just did things like universal health care. We can, I mean, school shootings, Australia took care of their problem. One school shooting and it was over. We have them like every day, like 30 times a year more.
Yeah.
So we can do better. We could do better. There are ways around this stuff. We
Yeah.
choose.
They do have them less frequently than us for sure. That doesn't mean they eliminated them, but they have them much less frequently.
That's what I'm saying, right? And again, limiting. I'm not ever saying we're going
Not
to
that
stop it.
not that for doing exactly what they did, but yeah.
Right. But there are ways. All I'm saying is there's all sorts of different things we can do as a society, and we haven't exhausted those possibilities. And we seem to think, oh, the way we do things are perfect, and it's the cost of a free society is that sometimes these shitty things happen. But they never say the cost of a free society is that sometimes we're going to have like drug addicts living on the street mugging people. They say that's got to be eliminated. We need the police out there, but that's part of the free society that they're championing. We need to do better, and we need to think. We should act like scientists sometimes,
Yeah,
and we should also act as if we care about each other.
right.
You know, that's me being a softy humanist, though. So
Gotcha. Now, when you look at all forms of media today, do you see a blurring of the lines happening between reporting and editorializing? And do you think that's a
yeah,
problem? And how do we combat that?
I don't think it's avoidable. You
Okay.
know, I knew early on that the kind of reporting I was going to do was going to have a point of view because I don't believe that you can go out there and be 100% neutral on all these issues. I'll tell you, like my models for doing this were people like Ida B. Wells. She was a black female reporter living in the Reconstruction South,
Okay.
and she was combating lynchings.
Yeah.
She would go to small towns where lynchings occurred, and she would write about the lynchings that happened. She didn't go there neutral about the subject of lynching.
Right.
Right? She didn't go, "Oh, lynching, pro or con." She was like, "Lynching is bad. I want to write about why this is bad, and I want to shock people into being better." You know, and I think George Orwell, when he was writing about war, he wasn't necessarily writing about saying, "Oh, war is great," or "war is neutral," or "I don't really have an opinion on war." He was writing about the realities of war with the idea towards maybe when we have wars, we do them for better reasons, we do them less horribly, and that we're not just killing each other for no reason. I'll go Sinclair Lewis when he wrote about the meatpacking industry in Chicago, didn't go in there saying, oh, meatpacking is a neutral thing that happens, and the terrible things that happen in slaughterhouses where human beings are being losing finger parts and they just grind it up into sausage anyway. And half the time you're eating sausage, you're eating a little bit of people,
Wow. That's
or that
crazy.
the terrible conditions there are like literally destroying the souls of people who have to murder cows all day, and they just look in the cow's eyes and murder it. They were losing their humanity. He didn't write about that from a neutral point of view, right? He wrote to make the world a better place. And I think when you run into a professional journalist who says, "I maintain staunch neutrality about the issues I'm writing about," they're not being truthful. And one example I give is I was once at a swearing in ceremony for Gina Raimondo's second term. It was being held outside. She was the governor. It was being held outside the state house in the back. It was very cold out. And I saw all the cameras aligned, and I was one of them. I was there. It wasn't the kind of story I usually do, but I was bored, so I was there. And all the cameras are aimed at the podium, at what Gina Raimondo was going to say. And as I'm standing there a little to the right, I look over to the back and I see there's a guy there holding a sign that is in some way critical of Gina Raimondo. And I remember thinking at the time, because I'd been thinking about this for a while, the direction you choose to point your camera is your bias.
Gotcha.
Our bias in that moment was Gina Raimondo is an important woman who has something important to say. Dude with a sign in the back is an unimportant crank who doesn't have anything important to say, so we're not going to turn our cameras towards him. And this is so our bias in the regular media is always towards power, it's always towards influence, and it's always towards like people with money.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of it in a different term. The governor or the mayor of Providence or all these politicians, whenever they want to say something, they just put out a press release, and everybody dutifully covers it and say, "Here's what Senator Whitehouse said. Here's what the governor said." Whereas there are people living in the community, like in the Port of Providence, who are dealing with asthma rates that are higher than anywhere else in the country for their children,
Because of the air quality, I assume. So,
right? Because of the air quality, because of the pollution in the port. The highest is there is no place in America with higher incidences of asthma than in the Port of Providence. There are
huh.
places equal, but there's no place worse.
Right.
We are absolutely topping out that line. But how do they get their story out? How do they, when they put out a press conference or press release or have a press conference, who covers that? And my thought was, I should do that because if I'm the only reporter in a room and that story needs to be told and they have no power to get it onto Channel 12, get it into the Journal, get it the Boston Globe to show up, I'm hoping to do that. Now, is that a bias of mine? Maybe, but it's also me being like trying to balance the world a little bit, balance the bias. So I certainly have a left wing attitude. I certainly aim my camera towards people who have less power. And I also tend to want things like, better environment. I want better human rights. I want less authoritarianism. I want police to behave. I want police not to be beating on poor people as much. I want all these things. I want trans kids to grow up and live a full and beautiful life. I want all those things. And so, therefore, that's what motivates me to do my job. I'm not there just to like boringly write out, here's what happened. There you go. I mean, because what I'm hoping is that people will use this information to make the world a better place. I'll say one more thing. An editor at the New York Times recently said, I think it was just last year, like in early December or late November, that the job of the New York Times is not to defend democracy. And I was like, the job of every human being, including the New York Times workers, is to defend democracy. Because without democracy in this country, how do we ensure things like a free press? At a baseline, we have to have freedom of the press, freedom of speech, democratic institutions that protect those things, or else we live in a place where the truth will be determined by who's ever in charge in a government that does whatever it wants.
Yep.
We need to have these protections. We need those things. If you're just going to blindly report, here's the death of freedom of the press, the end, goodbye. That's not doing the job of what a free press should do. The free press has to have a reason to exist above and beyond just the dull reporting of facts. It has to have a point. You have to be pushing for better and better human rights and accessibility and science. I mean, one of the basic tenets of journalism is to tell the truth. Well, science is our best guess as a society as to what truth is. And if you're denying science in your writing and giving a lot of space to people who deny the efficacy of vaccines, you're not doing science and you're not doing the truth. You're allowing liars to say what they want to say. If you give a whole bunch of stuff to Christian nationalists who say this country was established as a Christian nation, and that's patently untrue, but you just let them say what they're going to say without
Yep.
pointing out the opposite, then you're not really doing the job of a journalist. You're just doing the job of a guy who's like, yeah, nothing I can do. Oh, well, you might as well be a bus driver at that point. Let me drive you to where you got to go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that guy. So I prefer to, so I don't think there's a problem with having an opinion and doing journalism. And I think, Fox News proves that because they are not fair and balanced. They are 100% right wing, and they've made the world in their image
Yeah.
because
And
of
they worked
success.
really hard to do that.
They did, yes, they did, and I love it that people come at me and say, "Steve, you're not a neutral reporter," and I'm like, I've never claimed to be. In fact, I've always been very honest about it. I've never said fair and balanced. I said truth, my first thing, um, and human beings. My second, I believe in those things. I believe human rights, the truth. I believe in democracy. I believe that we should be able to. I think human beings have a right to determine their own policing, which is something that is so obvious, and yet we don't really talk about that. But if you live in a community and the police are imposed on you, then you don't live in a free place, right? So if a bunch of white people in this city pay for the police and then say, "Oh yeah, go into South Providence and start pushing people around," that's not freedom for people in South Providence. People in South Providence should be in charge of the way they are policed. They should
What
be able
are
to
some
say,
of the issues you see with South Providence policing right now?
"Oh, they're." I think in Providence Police, I know they brutalize people. I've covered this story many times. I know right now in Providence there are police who will routinely roust people who are sleeping on the street in the middle of the night and just like tell them to move on. They will destroy encampments. I have seen tents where police have taken razor blades and cut the tents open in the middle of the night so the tents are not usable, so the people will freeze and move on. And I've seen, if you ever go to an abandoned homeless encampment, you can see certain tents where they've been a big X has been cut in the sides, and that's almost always done by the police. And it's done, and it was routine up in Woonsocket, and it's happened here in Rhode Island many times, in Providence, I mean, many times.
Where are the laws that they're acting on doing that stuff?
There is none. They're literally brutalizing people without any law. In fact, we have in Rhode Island something called the Homeless Bill of Rights, which was passed well over 10 years ago, that guarantees people the rights to, like, for instance, just like the police can't go to your house and break all your windows and kick in your doors and let you freeze to death in the middle of the night,
Right.
they're not supposed to be able to do that in a tent either. Now, they can
Interesting.
wake you up and say, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be here. We have to move you on. And there's legal ways in which they can do that. But they're not allowed to brutalize your stuff, wreck your stuff, treat you with that as if you're a criminal when you're not being a criminal. There's all sorts of different ways to do this. They brutalize people. And I've seen it. I've talked to people it's happened to. And I also know they've done it. I talked once to a mom and a 3-year-old girl, and the police pepper sprayed a group of children, including
Jeez.
a 3-year-old girl.
Yeah, that's bad.
This happened in Providence a couple of years ago. It was insane. It was they were breaking up a party in the middle of summer. The party got a little rowdy. Instead of showing up and telling everybody to simmer down or to just put a couple of cops on the street to watch the party and keep everybody under control, they decided to go in and brutalize these kids, and that went on forever. And that family, again, they were getting death threats after they came to me and told the story, and I wrote about the story. That turned into another whole thing.
Yeah.
Somebody tried to light the house on fire. The woman who was
Jeez.
um,
Did they catch the person who did that?
the woman who called me and reported that story and was fighting with the police about the way her family was being treated. At some point, somebody came to a house and tried to light stuff out on fire outside her house to start a fire.
Did they catch that person?
I don't think they did. No,
That's
I
bad.
don't. I know they did. I'll also tell you this: when she went to the police and told them about that, they don't do a proper investigation.
Yeah.
They didn't care. So,
Um, but so it sounded like though that there is a law. They're not supposed to brutalize the homeless people, cut their tents, but there is a law that says they can't like put tents up places. Like, what are they supposed to do? Is
yeah,
that
there's all sorts of laws about this. But here's the thing: if you were experiencing homelessness and you put up a tent in a public place like a park,
yeah,
the police could come by and say, "Look, we have an ordinance that says you can't have your tent here."
right?
But if you had your tent in a place that was not owned by the city, until the owner of that place said, "Hey, could you come and move those people off my land?" The police are not supposed to be able to just go in there and tell you to move.
Okay, that's how.
They're not.
Okay,
And so they have to have a complaint. They have to act on a complaint. Also, you have a right as a person to say, "Oh no, I think I do have a right to be here," and then you can push back, and lawyers can help you if they want. The fact is, living outside is not the optimal solution here,
right.
correct? I mean,
Yeah,
we know we don't want people living outside. In this weather right now, where it's like 20 degrees at night, people die. Every year, I cover a homeless vigil where we talk about all the people who died. And on average in Rhode Island, between 70 and 100, maybe more, people die while experiencing homelessness. And some of them die by freezing to death in the middle of the night.
you mean a year?
A year,
Yeah.
yes. It happens every year here in Rhode Island. And some of them die of other things. Overdose is very common, but many of them die from freezing to death in extreme weather
Yeah.
or complications from being sick in super cold weather. So so anyway, this happens beyond a question. I've interviewed a guy, and a week later, he was found dead on a bench in Woonsocket, his coat open, his head back, and he was frozen to death.
Jeez.
I mean, I've known people who have died. I've met people who have died. I've met people who are friends of people who have died. I've been to countless vigils for homeless people who have died in this state. And I will tell you that our elected representatives, including the governor and the mayor of Providence, would rather you didn't care about that so that they could continue to do the things they want to do. I don't, having done this for a while, having done this for well over 10 years now, I can say that I do not believe that they are acting in the best interest of people. They are literally trying to make the problem go away. They are not trying to solve the problem.
Gotcha. So, t talking about reporting and the public's consumption of reporting, a 2024 study by the National Literacy Institute found that only 79% of U.S. adults are literate. 54% of adults read at below a sixth grade level, and a whole 20% are below a fifth grade level. The US ranks only 36th in literacy. Are you
Mm.
worried that, as informative as you might be otherwise, the fact that over half of adults may be reading at a level where they're either not absorbing the information or they're misunderstanding it, that could affect having an informed public?
Yeah, I think it does affect having. I don't know that the public right now is informed. I
Yeah.
don't think we'd be suffering a Trump presidency right now if the public were informed, if they were
Right.
thinking properly. I just don't believe that. I will say that in the last election, about a third of the country voted for Trump, about a third of the country didn't vote for Trump, and about a third of the country didn't vote at all.
Right.
Right? And so, start looking at these statistics. I was really, I mean, long ago before cell phones became a big thing. I think the literacy rates were even more dire. But I really believe that things like texting and cell phones have helped people to be at least that literate, so they can punch the right buttons on their computer, on their phones,
Right.
and access certain information. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. Not I mean, the whole idea of a democracy is to have a public that is somewhat informed, and you're not even talking about the idea of misinformation,
Right.
right? I mean, you and
Because there's a
I,
lot more information available to people because of technology, but a lot of it's crap. So
right,
picking the yeah.
and you and I might have certain filters so that we can see what that is, but when you're talking about people who have low reading comprehension, or who are just hearing it on the radio or watching it on TV, they are not interrogating those stories well enough to determine the truth or falsity, or to see the slant, or to understand how they're being manipulated by people. Look at the way the giant media is consolidating, and right now. Oh, back up. Consolidation of the media right now. Sinclair, a Texas right wing Christian nationalist group, owns Channel 10 and Channel 6.
Yeah.
Okay. The
See,
same company owns two of our three big television station news organizations. 6 and 10 have now merged behind the scenes, and it's just one news organization on two different channels.
jeez.
And they're being run by the Sinclair Corporation, which is a right wing group out of Texas. Our newspaper, the Providence Journal, is also owned by a Texas newspaper group. Channel 12 claim, I mean, the local reporters will say we're not Fox News, but it says Fox News 12 on all their trucks,
Exactly.
right? The Boston Globe comes into our state and they do good work, and they might not be right wing owned, but the news stations like WPRO and all the other, these are right wing conglomerates. Where is the balance here? Where is the left wing represented? I'm almost it, weirdly enough, and I'm
Yeah.
not enough. You
Damn.
know, I am not nearly enough. Tell me where the um point to the humanist slash atheist reporters in the world who own that and say, yeah, I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, whatever. There's not many. There's
Right.
not many. I'm pretty singular in Rhode Island. I mean, I think there are other people who believe the way I do, but they're not leading with that. They're not saying that's who they are. They might say I'm a lapsed Catholic, or
Yeah.
whatever, but they're not coming out and saying, oh, I don't believe in God, because that they're afraid of saying that. I own that truth, and I'm not afraid to be 100% honest about where I'm coming from and what I'm doing. Um, yeah, I mean, from the point of view of the media consolidation of the world, we're kind of screwed. And you're right about people not being able to interpret that, because the only information they're getting is like this Venezuela thing, right? That guy was evil. He was not elected. He was like he's sending drugs into our country.
He
Deep
was
down we all know.
personally mailing it over. No. I'm just-
Exactly. Right. That's why we took him into custody. We went into another country the other night, and we kidnapped the leader, and we put him in prison or wherever the hell he is, and we took over a whole country like we had the right to.
Without
And
declaring war, did we even declare war? No, we didn't.
no, no, right. The president doesn't have the right to do that without
Exactly.
Congress authority. He just went and did it.
Yeah.
And why did we do that? We did it for oil. Everybody knows that, but they're going to talk about the drugs. They're going to talk about this. They're talking about freedom. They're talking about all this
I was kind of
bullshit.
shocked when Trump just said, "Yeah, the oil." I was like, "Why would you?"
Hey, but and I'm just and it's astounding to me the number of people who think this is a good thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's not a lot. I know it's like 25% or so. Maybe it's 30 something. But even a lot of Republicans are going, "Whoa, what is this?" So this is like annexing Poland or something. This is a bad move. But this is where we are. We're repeating. There's a playbook there from the 1930s, and we're kind of replaying it. Kind of sucks.
I remember the Sinclair group from, was it 5 or 10 years ago, when everyone put up a video of them all saying the same script at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. There.
I don't even
Yes.
remember what it was about, but I just remember.
So it was just about the Sinclair thing, right? The Sinclair literally writes the stories and sends them to the local news, and they're required to read them.
Yeah.
This is what's happening here. And then you look at people like on Channel 10, like Dean Valicenti. He is 100% pulling off, putting out right wing talking points, and he's doing it with glee. This is because this is where his money comes from. This is what he gets paid to do.
Yeah.
Real reporter wouldn't do that, but Dean Valicenti is a personality, and he doesn't care if he's gonna hurt the state because he's gonna make money while he's doing it.
Yeah.
Bad dude. Dean Valicenti is a bad dude.
And with the reading comprehension thing, I've had people, I've been arguing with people about politics, and then they send me an article, and the article says the exact opposite of what they're claiming. It just drives me
Right.
nuts.
It is really, that is super hard to deal with. And to try and I don't know how to do that and not come off as like, oh, I'm so much smarter, and I'm like, you don't want to come off as like, condescending, but at the same, so I try in my work to just be truthful, factual, like neutral. I never make fun of people. I never, there's people out there who will like, Gina Raimondo, for instance, who I did not like as a governor,
Right.
but I never called her Queena Raimondo as some pundits
I don't
did,
even know
right?
what
I
that's
always,
supposed to mean. Is that
yeah, it's just like a way of like minimizing her. It's a way of like putting her in her place. I don't know what it is. It's like high school shit, right? And
yeah,
like making fun of somebody's name or something. And I'm like, no, she's Governor Gina Raimondo. Just write it out. It's boring to write it out. Just write it out anyway.
yeah.
She has a title. Use the title. Don't make fun of people's names. I've heard all and seen and read all sorts of things about where people would rather say Senator Shithouse instead of Senator Whitehouse or whatever, and
Oh
that's just
God.
bullshit. That doesn't advance the narrative, and it's not helpful, right? I do not want to be doing that kind of stuff. I want to do real reporting, and I want to be respectful, even if I don't like you. There are people in this, like, I do not like Governor McKee. I think he's a bad governor. I think he's kind of dumb. I think he's venal, and I think he's also done some illegal shit. I can't prove all of it, but I think he has. And but I'll say this: I call him Governor Daniel McKee. I do not make fun of his name, and I treat the position seriously because I want people to know that I'm serious when I say this stuff, and I'm not just going after him for no reason or because I dislike him. I'm going after him because he's a bad man doing a bad job. That's how I feel.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Steve Alquist, we've been talking for a while. Thank you
Yeah.
for spending so much time with us. I think that's
Yeah.
all
This
the
is fun.
questions I had prepared.
Okay. Well, this is great. I had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, and you have a good rest of your afternoon.
You too. Thanks.
Bye. Bye. Well, well, well. Now, if there are any call-ins, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Also, while I wait for those, I am going to continue to read this lovely article. Overlay, overlay. Where were we? This is, again, reading from Friendly Atheists. Will the Maine Supreme Court allow a mother to keep harming her daughter with religion? Bickford hid from Bradeen how much she was indoctrinating her daughter. Bickford once told Bradeen she was taking Ava out of school to visit the state capitol, but that was a lie. She and Ava attended an anti-abortion protest. She also sent Ava to a church-sponsored overnight retreat without telling him. Bradeen wasn't told the location, and Ava wasn't allowed to have a phone there, so he couldn't communicate with her as it happened. At another point, Bickford was on the verge of baptizing Ava without telling Bradeen. Again, if this was me, I'd be going to jail in a video game. He only found out through a third party. When your custody agreement says both parents have shared control over the daughter's religious upbringing, those are all things that should have been discussed together. I wonder why these guys were separated. It's a big mystery. But even when Berdine was on his own, Berdine the father, Bickford the mother, by the way, Bickford forced her religion into the picture anyway. She sent Ava to his house with more religious paraphernalia than typical. She's trying to get back in, but she's trying to rejoin the relationship, but first she has to convert him. She also demanded that they homeschool Ava in order to avoid those evil public schools to teach all the godlessness. I mean, in order to avoid public schools that she believed posed a danger to kids. The judge said of Bickford, ironically, her explanation is that she wants to be able to review what her child is learning, but she has not given the father, Mr. Berdine, the option to weigh in on events that Ava attends. They're always accusing other people of doing exactly that which they are doing. An expert testified that the church was cult-like. I didn't need you to tell me that. At one point, the judge heard from Dr. Janja Lalek. I'm sure that's exactly how you pronounce that, by the way. An expert on cults. Bickford and my cult leader told me that's how you pronounce it. Bickford and her lawyer did not object to Lalek when she delivered testimony, though they tried to have it all tossed out afterwards. Lalek explained that closed social systems like this church had certain elements in common. A charismatic and authoritarian leader, this is ringing a bell for me, who could not be questioned, the promise of salvation, a demand for loyalty, etc. When do I have to sign that federal loyalty pledge, by the way? They also promoted hateful rhetoric, opposing science, public schools, and the gays, homosexuality. That sort of indoctrination, Lalek explained, could have a serious impact on a developing child, filling her with inferiority and doubt. It was also a problem that Ava didn't appear to have a choice in the matter. She was pressured to comply and conform. Importantly, Lalek never said the church was a cult. She just said it shared some characteristics with them. Because, they're all kind of cults at the end of the day, aren't they? Excuse me. Bickford's new medical views were harming her daughter. Speaking of alternative media being a cancer in society, there was a time when Ava was up to date with her vaccinations. But then COVID broke her mother's brain. I mean, she had an inhaler for her allergies and asthma. Did her mother take her fucking inhaler away? Why is that in past tense? But since joining the church, Bickford had become an anti-vaxxer, the mother, Bickford, rejecting shots for COVID and the flu, and fought the father, Berdine, when he wanted Ava to get the HPV vaccine. I'd be going to jail twice. The anti-science mentality also extended to antibiotics. When Ava got pneumonia, Bickford refused to let her take the proper medication to treat it. And I was making fun of the inhaler thing. Ava's doctor was eventually able to prescribe an alternative medication that Bickford allowed. Okay, the doctor should go to jail too, and the mother. Do not enable these people. Don't do it. Oh, well, if you want, we could use this herb instead. No, fuck you. Okay, I'm making a very strong claim when I don't know what alternative medication the doctor. Well, I saw the alternative medicine, and it might not be what I think it is. So, but still. God, I hate these people. When Ava was dealing with anxiety, Bickford never even considered taking her to see a professional. She dismissed the very idea of anxiety. Anxiety is a left wing. Anxiety is Satan trying to deceive you. No, saying that prayers alone would solve the problem. She also argued that mental health care was a hoax. Big Andrew Tate fan. Where did that originally come from again? I don't even remember. In short, Berdine's decision-making when it came to medicine and health was seen by the judge as more rational and in Ava's best interest, while Bickford's decision-making was not. It's almost as if there's a cause behind that. The church started a war against the father, Berdine. The mom ran back to her church and said, "Please fight my battle for me." Oh my god, what is this? Shortly after their custody trial began in August of 2024, Bickford took Ava to church where Pastor Travis Carey delivered a diatribe about the situation. Pastor Carey implied that the father's issue was with Christianity and not the extremism inherent in this particular church. Of course, he's the pastor of it. That Dr. Lalek was paid. He knows that that Dr. Lalek was paid a lot of money to find dirt on them, and that the judge's ruling would ultimately depend on whether or not she believed in God. Ava was forced to listen to all of it.
Let's begin by prayer. There is a dear sister in the church. You guys know Emily Bickford, and for months in preparation for what really is a I guess a custody battle. There's been 50-50 with dear Ava, 11-year-old Ava, who's...
Excuse me, the custody battle is over. The mother is violating the terms of custody by taking it upon herself to, without consulting or talking with the father about anything, making her own decisions about the kid, which she is not allowed to do. This is not a custody battle. This fucking brainlet dumb fuck is already wrong. We're 15 fucking seconds in. Let's continue.
Been with the church family. She's had teen camp with the teenagers this past weekend, and Ava's grown in the Lord. And Emily's made a priority that when she has the custody over her daughter, that they're here, and they're here all the time. But Ava's father has had a difficult time with that. We've been praying for Matt in his salvation for a long time. It's a unique situation because you guys probably are aware that
he probably rambled.
Justice is so much now in the hands of a judge, and no matter what...
Did he say justice so much now in the hands of a judge? As opposed in the hands of who? You?
What area of civilization, culture, or politics you're looking at, that can go one way or the other depending on who appointed that judge. Matt's side, Ava's father, has hired what they call an expert witness. And this expert witness out of California was hired for a large sum of money to find
California, right?
any dirt they can on Calvary Chapel, on Pastor Ken Graves, and on myself, and on Ava's faith and Emily's faith. And depending on where this judge stands with God and his word, will depend on how the decision goes forth. So it's hard to imagine, though, when you're 11 years old, and you're
being put through this by a pastor who's airing their shit. Well, to be fair, it isn't a court case, but still, it's kind of fucked up.
Dealing with a level of persecution that...
Yeah, right. You're the one who's persecuted. The mother's the one who's persecuted.
Young Ava's dealing with.
Yeah. The father's the one persecuting the daughter. Yep, okay. The judge was so appalled by that sermon that she transcribed the entire excerpt from that sermon, more than 6 minutes of preaching, and concluded that it was completely inappropriate. You don't say. Sadly, Pastor Mr. Carey went far beyond simply referencing the litigation. The court is further influenced by the fact that at no point did Miss Bickford remove Ava from the congregation. Once it became clear that Mr. Carey was not going to offer a simple prayer. Instead, the mother allowed Ava to receive the message that her father was the enemy and was persecuting her. The court finds that, more likely than not, Ava's receipt of this message, delivered with the blessing of her mother, was psychologically detrimental. Can't be manipulative in the custody battle and not have the judge notice and hold it against you, my friend. After considering of all of this, the judge came to some straightforward conclusions. For example, when it came to Ava's health, Bradeen can make all final decisions. Yes, based, since the mother clearly wasn't interested in following the advice of medical experts. Based. Was the judge a lady or a man? Lady. Queen judge. When it came to Ava's religious upbringing, the legal reasoning was more complicated, but the evidence was clear that Ava's psychological health was in danger, and that Bradeen, the father, should be allowed to make those decisions as well. Based Queen Judge. The court finds that Miss Bickford's unquestioning loyalty to the church and abdication of independent decision-making has placed Ava in situations where she receives messages that pose an immediate risk of significant psychological harm. Further, the court finds that due to Miss Bickford's level of commitment to Calvary Chapel, there is little to no room for the parties to co-parent on religious decision-making, as they were fucking supposed to from the original custody agreement. Because the parties cannot effectively co-parent on this issue, one of the parties must be vested with the right and responsibility to make decisions. Miss Bickford has handed over that right and responsibility to the church and is no longer exercising independent decision-making regarding the messaging that her daughter receives, because when you're part of a cult, what decisions do you ever make? Accordingly, the court concludes that a narrowly tailored restriction of Miss Bickford's rights is as follows. Mr. Bradeen is allocated the right and responsibility to make decisions regarding whether Ava attends any services, gatherings, or events associated with Calvary Chapel. Nope. Whether and what material, literature, video, or other messaging associated with, or created, or published by Calvary Chapel she reviews, and whether she associates or communicates with any member of Calvary Chapel other than the mother, Miss Bickford. That wasn't some rash anti-Christian decision. That was a tough analysis of a complicated issue. But after weighing the extremism of this church beliefs and how it was quite literally harming Ava, the court go after the rest of them too. The court came to a thoughtful decision. It's not like Bickford wouldn't have contact with Ava. Bradeen just had veto power in a few key areas. I was just kidding, by the way. This church is clearly worse than most. When that decision was handed down last December, it didn't make much news because it was just a private conflict. But it created a firestorm in the conservative Christian universe after right-wing legal group Liberty Counsel, no longer able to fundraise off of Ken Davis, decided to make this its next cultural war battle. For months now, they've been fighting to overturn the judge's decision, and they recently got the Maine Supreme Court to consider their appeal. That also led to countless fundraising emails that claimed Dr. Lalick was a Marxist. Classic. Allegations that, there are actual Marxists out there you could attack instead of attacking this person. I don't know if you knew that. Allegations that the liberal judge decided Christianity was a cult. I mean, that is true, but it wasn't what the judge decided. They were focused on this one particular really bad church. And accusations that the anti-religious... That's miswritten. There's a typo there. Accusations that the was anti-religious because the judge was anti-religious. That's what's missing. Because she purposefully refused to capitalize the word God throughout her ruling. So petty. Liberty Counsel also claimed that Bradeen, whom they portrayed as a horrible father, didn't want Ava to hang out with her friends from church. No friends for you, little girl. That Ava was banned from reading the Bible or even talking about religion with her mom, and that Pastor Carey just wanted to pray over Bickford and Ava. That's all the poor pastor, that's all he wants to do. Then there is like an excerpt from, I guess, was this their propaganda? Last December, a Maine judge issued one of the most hostile custody orders we've ever seen. It forbids Ava from attending any church or Christian event. Okay, that's a flat-out lie. They specifically said this chapel. You're not the only Christian chapel, asshole. I know every Christian thinks they're the only one, but... Even Christmas or Easter. What will the Easter Bunny think of us now? Associating with our church friends, anyone connected to Calvary Chapel, or any Christian friends at all. Reading the Bible. Or the demon is taking my throat. The frog in my throat is sent by the devil. Excuse me. Reading the Bible or being exposed to any religious philosophy. Discussing her faith with her own mother. They twisted the ruling to say Bradeen thought the Bible itself was psychologically harmful, which is not what anyone said. And that he had, I'll say it, but they won't. And that he had some kind of vendetta against religion, and not just the way this particular church was harmful to his child. One fundraising email even pretended the judge said Bickford was a fit parent except for the fact that she is a Christian. That's not even close to accurate. She's an anti-vaxxer too. The judge found that Emily is the propaganda piece from the cavalry. The judge found that Emily is a fit parent, except for the fact that she is a Christian. The judge marked Ava and Emily's faith by purposefully refusing to capitalize the word God, something I have no one ever before has ever thought of not capitalizing the word God. This judge is the first person, excuse me. The judge even chastised Emily for allowing the church pastor to pray for Ava, and the judge ruled that Emily could not take Ava to any church unless Matt Bickford approves. And Matt has steadfastly refused to approve any church. Is this guy even an atheist? Oh, the fucking mother. That mother looks exactly like Megan Riley, but younger. Maybe a little bit taller. Am I crazy? You are your face. You've become your face as you grow older. In fact, every article written about this case in conservative publications appears to distort the facts more and more. The Christian Post allowed Liberty Council's leader to get away with several lies in a single sentence without noticing that they were indeed lies. Calvary Chapel is not a cult. Their custody order banning Emily Bickford from taking her child to a Christian church because of its biblical teachings violates the First Amendment. Liberty Council founder and chairman Matt Staver said in a statement shared with the Christian Post. By the way, the First Amendment is when the mother in a joint custody with the father gets to basically give the finger to the father and do what she wants. That's what the First Amendment means, by the way. Dumb fuck. No one called it a cult. I mean, I did. The custody order didn't ban Bickford from taking Ava to a Christian church. And the biblical they said it was like a cult, basically. And the biblical teachings weren't the issue. I wouldn't even quibble over that point. They said it was like a cult. Oh, did they say it was a cult? The point is very clear, but it's also true. That's kind of the awkward point. The custody order didn't ban Bickford from taking Ava to a Christian church. And the biblical teachings weren't the issue. It's not like the judge said Bradeen deserved custody because this church focused way too much on the Sermon on the Mount. True. But this is how Liberty Council operates. When the facts aren't in their favor, they make things up just because they know their donors are too stupid to realize they're being scammed. Actually, their donors are in full alignment. That's the point. And Christian media outlets are happy to act as stenographers for them. Just look at this opinion piece's headline with a website run by Focus on the Family, suggesting an extremist judge blocked a Christian mother from taking her daughter to church. Parents should be allowed to take children to church by Paul Batura. I'm reading that. Hold on. I'm bringing that up. I'm going to bring that up on here. We're going to see what he said about this after. Paul Batura. Exactly the same thing, but yeah. It's not the same site that it quoted here, but it's where I found it. Liberty Council eventually asked the Maine Supreme Court to take up this case and overturn Nofsinger's ruling, giving Bradeen power over Ava's religious upbringing. By the way, did I redo the... Yeah. They said the entire case boiled down to a simple question. Does a district court have the authority to prohibit a parent from taking her child to church? What the lower court did, Liberty Council said, was a violation of Bickford's First Amendment rights. Get out of here. They said in the brief that the judge's repeated use of God instead of God, they are so obsessed with that, revealed some disdain and hostility for Bickford's monotheistic religious belief. Give it a fucking rest, bro. Give it a rest. They said giving Bradeen final say over Ava attending that church amounted to handing him a heckler's veto over a fit parent's right to direct the religious upbringing of their minor child. They're accusing him of what she did. They're accusing him of what the mother did. Anyway, I'd be going to jail. And they insisted that if not only did she try to baptize my child without my consent, not only did she try to not vaccinate, not only did she try to not fucking treat my kid for pneumonia, she fucking gathered her fucking church against me? Bruh. It's Shover. And they insisted that what this church told Ava amounted to mainstream and conventional religious beliefs based on the Bible. Not even close. Therefore, the ruling was a form of religious persecution. Legally, their argument was that religious beliefs didn't need to be logical to warrant protection. It's downright hilarious to watch Liberty Counsel freely admit this church's beliefs are illogical. I mean, when you're in a legal setting, is that what you're admitting? Or are you just saying we don't have to argue about whether or not they're logical? To play the devil's advocate. I mean, the God's advocate. But even that argument fails because the issue at hand isn't that the church's beliefs are wrong or ridiculous. Yeah, they're not even arguing over that point anyways. Why is that even being brought up? If that were the issue, then every religion would fall under that category, obviously. The problem was how the church was psychologically harming Ava. And Liberty Counsel refused to address the substance there. Instead, they talked about how, for example, it wasn't psychologically harmful to denounce homosexuality. Unless you're one of the gays, in which case we do want to harm you. Ooh. It was as if Liberty Counsel never read the judge's decision. Can they read it all? Instead, they just looked for a handful of buzzwords, then blew them entirely out of proportion. They think that any insane belief, as long as it is cloaked in a religious shield, must be respected. The Maine Supreme Court heard oral arguments a few weeks ago, leading to even more coverage about this case. You can watch the entire hearing below. We will not watch the entire hearing.
And good afternoon. You can be seated. The matter before the court is Cumberland 2529, Emily Bickford versus Matthew Burdine. We are being streamed on the web, both by audio and by video. I see Councilor Preston.
Would contest is the correct standard. In this particular case, there is no finding of abuse or neglect. In fact, what we have is a fit parent.
She didn't treat her kid for pneumonia. She didn't vax the kid for HPV. She didn't comply with her requirement to consult with the father in the joint custody over religious upbringing.
There's a fit parent is presumed to act in the best interest of their child. There's no immediate or substantial harm that is shown. In fact, the respondent's brief, or the appellee's brief in page 27, purports to suggest that there's compelling interest, and they put forth only 5 things. Number one, that Ava at one time was observed to have anxiety, that she had an observance of a panic attack, that she had questions, that she put notes around the house, and that on one occasion she put in a workbook that this demon image was scary. That's all that they have as far as
It's probably true that it's not legally compelling, but the kid's running around. This demon is chasing me. I'm freaked out of my mind. There's nothing wrong going on here. This is normal stuff that happens to children.
compelling interest test. That cannot be a compelling interest, and it cannot amount to immediate and substantial harm, justifying this drastic change and taking away from a fit parent the right to the religious education of their child.
She never offered that right to the other guy. She only wanted it for herself. That's not how it works with joint custody. That's not how it works in the fucking marriage. Urgh.
Not only does it not survive the compelling interest test, but it cannot survive the least restrictive means. In fact, on page 34 to 35, only 1 1/4 pages of the entire appellee's brief is dedicated to trying to justify and defend the least restrictive means, or narrow tailoring. And there's nothing there that is in that 1 1/4 page that suggests narrow tailoring. In fact, the appellee's brief essentially concedes that a total ban on worship would not survive strict scrutiny. But they suggest that what is here is not a total ban, it's just a ban totally with regards to Calvary Chapel, which we'll talk about later. But it is a total ban because under Calvary Chapel and all the things associated with it, including the people that attend Calvary Chapel, also applies to any other church or religious organization.
No, it doesn't. You are a freak show. It is not normal. All right, fucking skip.
One parent wants religious upbringing as one religion. The other one wants a different religion, and they've both shown they can't cooperate on this issue. What's the test the court is supposed to do in allocating?
Let's assume it was the original order.
Yeah, the test would be still the compelling interest test. And
But they both
marital.
have equal interests, don't
But
they?
one parent can't have a total veto over the religious education of the other. There may be circumstances.
But this wasn't a total veto.
It is a total veto. In fact, since December of 2024, it's operated.
Not sending my kid to this one church is a total veto on all. Fuck you.
As a total veto. There's been no
The
association.
language of the order, and obviously whatever has happened since then is not before us, but the language of the order is not a total veto.
It is a total veto,
Slap
respectfully.
down.
It says,
Bitch
for example,
slapped.
that Mr.
Get outta
Radin is
here.
allocated the right and
Chad
responsibility to make
Justice
decisions
Stanfill.
regarding anything
Chadina
related to Calvary
Justice
Chapel in terms of
Stanfill.
any attendance, services, gatherings, events, anything associated with Calvary Chapel, any material, literature, video, or other
Right.
messaging associated
But there is
with.
no veto over the interactions that Ms. Bickford may have with their child.
Well, not with the child, but with regards to the religious education, there is.
I assume she engages her child on religious matters as well as other matters.
No. In fact,
What?
she is abiding by the order because the order gives a
I
specific.
swear she hasn't talked about religion with her child once. That she has been talking about nothing but that since this has happened.
Absolute veto to Mr. Bradeen. And though it's not in the record, Mr. Bradeen has not given any consent to anything, to any church or any organization, despite her request. And that's exactly how the order is designed to operate. It's operating exactly how it was designed to give total authority into Mr. Bradeen, and it relates as it relates to other churches or religious organizations. So it's not just limited to churches, that he has the right to make a final decision as to whether she can read the Bible or be introduced or associated
To
with
read the
or
Bible
in any
at
contact
all?
with
That's not
religious
what it
philosophy,
said.
whatever that
Is
is.
there a tension between the best interest of the child standard we use and freedom of religion? Are those two things in tension?
They're not in tension. I think when you have a case like this, and the court order below actually acknowledged that this was a religious sensitive situation, and therefore the reason for the compelling interest test. And when you have a religious sensitive issue, you've got this court in the Ossier case finding that there's no narrow tailoring. You've got the Harris case with regards to snake handling at the Mississippi Supreme Court, where the child was introduced to a snake handling church, and it was very disturbing emotionally, and yet the one parent said, I want to have a veto over that particular type of exposure to religious activity. The court in Mississippi said, no, you can't have a total veto
So
over the other parent.
to respect each parent's rights, would the result be that when the child is with the mother gets to decide, and when the child is with the father gets to decide?
Absolutely. The duality of competing religious ideas, or even irreligion versus religion, is something that courts have countenance and
Well, you
dealt
seem to
with.
be suggesting then that to the extent 1653 gives the court the right to allocate that decision-making to one parent over the other, so long as it is in the best interest of the child, is invalid.
I would say that it's not invalid per se, but I would say that it cannot be allocated totally to one parent. It has to be dual decision-making. And how the courts, for example, in Kingston, the Utah court, this was a polygamous situation where they were grooming, the allegation was that they were grooming children to be child brides.
So, counsel, where is the line? Is there any line in your mind as to, let's say the allegation is that a particular practice or sect is causing harm to a child? Is there any line at all, or is it?
There's certainly, Your Honor.
What is it? Where's the line that you would draw?
There would be a physical, like if somebody were being sexually abused in a particular church, no question about that, that would be something. But in this case,
Short
there's
of
two
that?
places, and I'd like to point out.
Anything,
page 42.
anything short of that?
Well, let me look at this particular case, appendix page 42. This is the order. This is the order, and it says that there's no showing of harm.
I know, I understand that, but I'm asking you where you draw the line. Is it just at physical abuse or sexual abuse? Is that where you draw the line?
I think it certainly would be at that, but
Anything
it's certainly
beyond
not at the clashing of different ideas or different religious
No,
ideas.
where
He doesn't
do
want
you
to
draw
answer the
line?
question.
Well-
He doesn't want to answer the question that just because someone's not being sexually abused, they may be harmed in some way. Because then his client, the mother, would absolutely have been found to have harmed the child.
I would draw the line the way the courts have drawn the line. For example, in the snake handling church, there was a possibility that she could have been bitten, but they said you can't prohibit that. In the case with the order, where they were being groomed allegedly for being a child bride, you can't totally prohibit
He's
that.
refusing to answer the fucking question. He's so fucking annoying. Let's see the father's.
Was there a less
lawyer.
severe
Is that who this is?
scenario that could address the concerns about the child's welfare other than giving one party full and final prerogative to make these decisions?
Well, hypothetically, Your Honor, that could be done. In this case, however, the court was very clear that it was the particular thing that this church was doing. And so there was a court order, in fact, that neither party could disparage the other parent or could allow a third party to do so. And yet Ms. Bickford allowed the child to go in to Calvary Chapel and listen to a sermon that disparaged her father.
But did she know ahead of time?
She did know ahead of time, Your Honor, that there was going to be discussion about the custody battle on that particular night. Once it went
She probably
off the rails,
asked for
she
it.
let her daughter sit there and listen to the discussion disparaging the father and talking about good versus evil.
If you can't
And
play
so
the
it's
game,
that.
you don't get
And
to
it might
fucking
also
ask
on
for
that
all
last
the
point,
power.
good versus evil. I mean, you could read this as saying what's making the child anxious.
If you can't play along and collaborate, you don't get anything. The other person gets all the power because you showed that you were acting in bad faith. So now you pay the price. You don't get to say now, oh, well, now he totally vetoes everything I wanted. Fuck you. You were doing that to begin with. But you just weren't doing it the legal route. So now you get fucked. Fuck you. You weren't playing along. You weren't working together. You weren't being a good faith interlocutor. Now, fuck you. You wanted to disparage the father to the whole church, rile the whole church against it, the father, when you were specifically told not to disparage the other person. You did it anyway. Now you pay the price. Easy as that.
Is that the religion of the mother is saying that because the father doesn't share that religion, that there are going to be consequences for him after life. And it says so in a very animated way. If we say that's as compared to another religion that is less aggressive in those tones, we can't decide, well, then that one's better than the other, just because perhaps the child's getting a little anxious at the demonology language, because then aren't we judging the religion itself? And we're not supposed to do that, are we? And if we did, there'd be an awful lot of religions that would then not be considered in the best interest of the child.
Well, again, Your Honor, we're not talking about a little bit of anxiety. We're talking about a panic attack, which is a very big manifestation of anxiety for a young kid. And so that's a specific harm. It's not something that's out in the future or something that's making her feel a little bit uncomfortable. Courts across the country, and this court has said on a number of occasions, that exposure to this type of conflict is terrible for kids. And now we have a young girl, 11 years old, sitting in church listening to a sermon that is talking about her parents being in a battle against each other and how her father is trying to prevent her from salvation.
It's your view that this order is founded not upon a religious hostility, but rather that essentially the mother's religious schooling or beliefs is creating an emotional minefield for the child in her relationship with the father.
It is causing harm to the child. It is causing documented panic attack harms to the child.
I guess I'm struggling with, though, your assertion that there's no hostility at all, or that the order is entirely neutral when it comes to the mother's religious beliefs. I mean, for example, there's language about how some of the sermons preach, I think the language used was sort of hateful or offensive rhetoric. I mean, hasn't the United States Supreme Court told us, for example, in Masterpiece Cake Shop, that it's not for the courts to decide what sort of what's offensive within a religion, that's not an exercise we should be engaging in. And it looks to me like the court below did some of that here.
Again, Your Honor, the line is not what's said, but the impact on the child. In this case, the impact was specific and named.
But how do we know that the court's analysis of the impact wasn't informed by what appears to be a lack of neutrality in evaluating sort of the religious beliefs of these two different parents?
Well, again, Your Honor, I think it is clear because the judge went through first off the best interest factors and talked about them and weighed them all out specifically. And if there was language in there, so if you look at, there's one case, I think it's Funk v. Osman, but I could be wrong, that talks about some of the similar language here, tricks and snares and such things. And the court said that language of that type can be harmful to a child. And if there is manifested harm to the child, that's where the line has to be drawn. And so while some of the language may seem hostile, I would suggest to you that, again, it's all grounded in fact. It's grounded in fact that's documented in the record that is supported by the expert in this case. case and is supported by the child's writing in her religious notebook that this is scary because of the demon. She's obviously affected by it.
You would agree with me that in this particular instance that the court did a straight best interest of the child analysis with respect to the allocation of medical rights, correct?
Yes, I would.
Medical decision making.
Yes, I would.
So there was no overlay of any type of strict scrutiny there, did not pertain.
No, Your Honor. The judge made a finding that Ms. Bickford's medical decisions were not religiously related, and in fact, Ms. Bickford testified that her, at least as to the COVID vaccination, that wasn't based in any religious
So might
belief.
we infer with the way that the allocation of rights with respect to medical decisions might suggest that there was some hostility with respect to the allocation of decision-making about religious issues? Because I note that with respect to the allocation of medical decision-making, that the father is required to consult with them. They have diametrically, it seems, pointedly departure between their views of how medications are supposed to be applied or what types of vaccinations should be afforded the child, which could have a direct negative impact upon the child's well-being. Notwithstanding that, in that circumstance, the court requires the father to consult with the mother with respect to making final decisions or before he makes final decisions. So does that suggest that there is something more in the way
You
of
mean the way she wasn't
antipathy that
doing?
was directed towards the decision in the context of religious
I'm not dissing
No,
him
Your
or
Honor.
anything.
In fact, the part of the judge's
funny.
order that
It's ironic.
talked about other religions
But-
other than Calvary
no, you
Chapel
should
also was the
interrogate
same
the other
order
side
as
too,
with medical
obviously.
decision-making. The parties have to have a discussion about the religion, but in the end, if they can't agree, as per our statute, Mr. Bradeen was given final decision-making. The reason why allocated was so necessary with regard to Calvary Chapel is that Ms. Bickford testified that she wouldn't follow a court order. There was a finding that Ms. Bickford did not consult with Mr. Bradeen about Calvary Chapel. In fact, she was short of lying, but had told Mr. Bradeen at one point that they were simply going to the Capitol when they were going for a abortion rally. There were a number of findings, and there was also a finding.
Can I ask you in the 40 seconds?
The
you
lie
have
of
remaining?
omission.
If the evidence indicated, not necessarily in this case, that the practices of the church did not result in harm that was manifested in the child, that doesn't tip the scales. Is harm to the child the touchstone of this?
It is, Your Honor.
If the harm to the child is de minimis, just a sort of a minor thing that the child cried on one occasion, would that still justify an order giving the veto prerogative to one of the parents?
No, Your Honor, and there are a number of cases that talk about that. There are a couple of cases that talk about anxiety that causes bedwetting, for example. And so it has to be some kind of manifestation or something that's severe. But the courts also say that we don't have to wait for it to be so severe that a child, suffers irreparable emotional harm. And in this case, much like a case where a child has anxiety and then soils himself, the child in this case had a manifested reaction to her anxiety, which was a panic attack, which are quite severe, especially in young children.
Thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
And Attorney Staver, you reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal. That any basis for an opinion may
this?
have been inadequate as well. Was there any objection below? Was it brought to the attention of the court in any fashion?
I don't think it needed to be, Your Honor. I think that the guardian, given the legislative mandate, needed to fulfill the obligations of the court and the statute in order. I don't think it was on the parent's attorney to make any type of objection.
The guardian was at the hearing on the web in this matter, both by video and by audio. I see counsel are present. I'm going to ask that you introduce yourselves by saying your names for the record.
On behalf of the appellant.
You represent, starting with the appellant.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Sarah Murphy on behalf of the appellant, Danielle H.
AAG Hunter Humphrey for DHHS.
Thank you. And Attorney Murphy, if you're ready to proceed, we'd be happy to hear your argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, again, Sarah Murphy on behalf of the appellant, Danielle H., who is also present in the courtroom with me today. Under Maine law, the paramount consideration in any proceeding affecting a parent's rights is the child's best interest. Title 22, Section 4005, and the entire child protective statutory scheme creates a role for the guardian ad litem that is not ceremonial, but essential to enable the court to reach an informed, constitutionally sound decision given the fundamental rights at stake in these proceedings. Specifically, Section 4005 requires that a guardian ad litem investigate, represent, and provide a recommendation to the court regarding the child's best interests. Now, those requirements are not disjunctive or permissive. Instead, the court and the GAL shall meet with the child and other relevant persons. Now, that statutory mandate reflects legislative recognition that children are vulnerable. The GAL's investigation was legally and facially deficient, requiring vacatur of the mother in this case. The GAL's investigation was legally and facially deficient, requiring vacatur of the mother's termination order. The guardian never observed the mother with the child, thus was wholly unable to investigate her ability to parent or the child's attachment to his mother. The guardian did not review the records of the mother's medical providers or substance abuse treatment providers. The guardian never met the mother face-to-face during the pendency of this proceeding. The guardian missed nearly half of the family team meetings in this matter. And the guardian filed one report which was prepared not for the mother's termination hearing, but for the father's jeopardy hearing, which was scheduled in February of 2024, months before the mother's termination trial in this matter. Without a sufficient investigation by the guardian, the record before the trial court lacked critical information about the mother's parenting capabilities, the child's attachment to the mother, the child's adaptability and needs, feasible reunification services and the timing for completion of those services, or less drastic permanency alternatives like a permanency guardianship that could better serve the child's long-term best interests. Absent such an investigation and corollary informed recommendation to the court, the TPR order cannot stand. As such, I respectfully urge this court to vacate the termination order of the district court and remand this matter for further proceedings. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer the court's questions, though I'm also fully prepared to go into further detail regarding the deficiencies of the TPR.
Well, the green light is on, so well timed.
Yes, Chief Justice.
So talking about the guardian, since that's where you started, let's assume we agree with you that the guardian completely, did not abide by the obligations that a guardian ad litem has in this case, that the investigation was inadequate, that any basis for an opinion may have been inadequate as well. Was there any objection below? Was it brought to the attention of the court in any fashion?
I don't think it needed to be, Your Honor. I think that the guardian, given the legislative mandate, needed to fulfill the obligations of the court and the statute in order. I don't think it was on the parent's attorney to make any type of objection.
The guardian was at the hearing?
The guardian was at the termination hearing, yes, Your Honor.
And subject to cross-examination, the fire of cross-examination, as it is said, to test any of the underpinnings of any opinion in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, but again, I do not think that that is a substitute for given the fundamental rights at stake in these proceedings, that is not an adequate substitute given the mandate of Section 4005 and the court obligations based on the guardian's appointment order from the court.
Did the court rely on the guardian's opinion in this case?
We don't know if the court relied on the guardian's opinion in this case.
There's no expression that the court was relying on the guardian's opinion.
No, but to make a best interest determination, because the guardian is required in child protective proceedings, the court cannot make a best interest determination.
They could just be interrogating because it's normal to do that, but it sounds like they're not buying this. Not buying this one, Chief. Nice try.
Is required in child protective proceedings as opposed to being permissive in other proceedings. You have to have that unbiased, objective opinion in these proceedings.
So is it your view that if the guardian has not abided by all of the statutory obligations, the court simply cannot proceed?
I think that there is a line, a threshold under which, so for example, if there has been, the guardian has not met with the child has met with the child throughout the case, but in one instance met with the child in a 4-month increment as opposed to a 3-month increment.
Are you aware of any authority that backs that up?
There's no 4005 backs that up. There is no fewer than 7 shallows.
Any of our case law that backs that up?
There's no case law that suggests otherwise, Your Honher. There are 2 cases cited by the department.
Oh, that's not a good argument, now, is it?
4 guardian ad litem reports. Was on a path toward, Your Honor. I struggle
here.
I do though.
Chief Justice Stanfill, Associate Justices, may it please the court. The legislature's express intent in providing a process for the termination of parental rights was to, quote, eliminate the need for children to wait unreasonable periods of time for their parents to correct the conditions which prevent their return to the family. In this particular case, the child entered state custody the day that he was born, affected by the presence of fentanyl. He remained in state custody about 16 months later.
Oh, wait.
Believed to be precise.
Oh, my God. This is for a completely different thing, isn't it? This is for a completely different case. I'm an idiot. All right. It was in the same hearing. All right. Wait. Anyway. Back to this article. A lot of the discussion is rehashing what's already been said in writing. But that last lady we listened to, that was for a completely different case, by the way. I'm sorry, I'm a fucking moron. I kept thinking to myself, I thought Ava was a girl. And I was like, oh my God, it's a different case. I'm a fucking moron. Wait. A lot of the discussion is rehashing what's already been said in writing, but one of the justices asked Matt Staver what an acceptable line was regarding when a church caused harm. Staver seemed to want no limitations whatsoever, but was there a line that he even agreed a parent could not cross? His response, if the church sexually abused the child, we listened to that would be a bridge too far. The judges seemed shocked by that response, with multiple people asking him anything short of that. I don't know how shocked they looked, but they were like, okay, does it have to be that much? What else? What else other than literally the worst thing that, well, not, kind of the worst thing. What, like, I guess you could murder them. What's the worst thing that could happen? All right, anything else they could do that could be harmful that's not literally the worst thing ever? Yeah. Staver didn't answer. He just kept deflecting. Yeah, we watched that. Instead, he pointed out that in other cases involving a snake-handling church and one in which children were groomed to become underage brides, judges still allow kids to attend those places of worship, which is not the flex he thought it was. The judges didn't seem to buy what Staver was saying. They noted that the lower court's ruling documented actual harm to Ava, with anxiety and panic attacks, not just theoretical harm. So did none of that matter to him? Nope, he said, adding that is not sufficient. The judges also pointed out that the issue wasn't whether one religion was unacceptable to the courts, but that the case centered on the inability to co-parent and the denigration of the other parent. Staver said, well, she didn't denigrate the other parent. The Chief Justice responded, but she allowed others to, which is the same thing. Bradeen's lawyer, Michelle King, simply reacted to all this by telling the judges, like the Chad she was, that all that mattered was preventing further harm to the child and maintaining the child's best interest and well-being. She noted the lies, too. First, no one was saying prayer was inappropriate, only that Carrie's diatribe was inappropriate. Second, it was wrong to dismiss what Dr. Laydick said because she was an expert in her field, and both sides agreed on that point. Finally, when there were religious differences between co-parents, it made sense to draw the line whenever harm came upon a child, and this was a case where there was documented harm against Ava. The judges asked whether the lower court's ruling exhibited any hostility toward religion and whether it was truly neutral with regards to religion. The response, all that mattered was the harm to the child, and Ava was harmed by what was said. In other words, no one was judging the church's beliefs, only the impact that had on Ava. Staver's rebuttal to all of this, the lowercase g is hostility against I'm gonna fucking throw myself out that window. That's an assault to both Christianity and Judaism and Islam. They don't even call him God in those, they call him Yahweh and they call him Allah. The lowercase g has nothing to do with Judaism and Islam, I promise you. Give it a rest. And that's what this order does. He's trying to bring in all the Abrahamic faiths together. She actually insulted all three. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. Oh my god. Oh my, capital G God. And that's what this order does. And that order reeks with that kind of hostility by intentionally doing that. The Maine Supreme Court will issue its decision, hopefully to affirm the lower court's decision in coming months. Ultimately, this case cuts to the heart of a serious problem. Are courts allowed to admit the truth when religion is causing harm to a child? Or is religion immune simply because it's religion? When faith crosses a line into fear, coercion, medical neglect, and psychological terror, like that book we reviewed in our 10th grade ELA class about the fire and brimstone sermons, the damage is real regardless of how many Bible verses accompany it. Bickford didn't just practice her faith, she surrendered her parental judgment to an institution that told a child to fear eternal torture, reject science, and view her own father as a spiritual enemy. That's not good co-parenting. That's not good parenting. That's not good adulting. That's just abdication of responsibility. Good line, Chief. What Bradeen argued in court wasn't radical or anti-religious in any meaningful way. Unfortunately. And he just wanted to protect his child. I'm sure the mother... don't worry, I know I've been going for a long time, Joe. I'll finish soon. He just wanted to protect his child. I'm sure the mother wants to do that too. The difference is his side has evidence backing it up. She has conspiracy theories. His side is objectively better for Ava, which is why the lower court was right to give him power over religious and medical decision-making. If the courts reject that logic, the consequences would extend far beyond this case. It would mean that fear-based indoctrination, medical neglect, emotional coercion, and psychological abuse could become legally untouchable as long as a pastor blesses them. It would mean that the state must look away even when children suffer, not because the harm is disputed, but because the harm is faith-based. The lower court understood what Liberty Counsel refused to acknowledge. Ava should not be treated like a symbol in a culture war fundraising campaign. She is a real child who suffered real panic attacks, real anxiety, and real distress. Giving Bradeen veto power over the source of that harm is not irrational. The only extreme position in this case is that nothing short of sexual assault can be sufficient to justify intervention, which is what the mother's lawyer tried to argue.
That's a permission slip for religious groups to get away with this other kinds of abuse. The Maine Supreme Court now faces a massive choice. The judges can reaffirm that children must not be treated as collateral damage in ideological warfare, that parental rights are not absolute when they become weapons, like the mother tried to weaponize them, and that religious belief does not grant anyone the power to terrify, isolate, and medically endanger a child without consequence. Or the judges can declare that harm based on scripture is acceptable in the name of the law. The latter decision would harm far more children than Ava. All right. There are no viewer call-ins that I can see. So, it was a good second episode. Thank you to all who watched. And to all, a good night. Happy 2026. Happy midterms coming up soon. All that jazz. Goodbye. Do 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 do. How many? Oh yeah, this guy is still doing crap. That's crazy. Professor Solem. This guy's a character. He's fun. I like him. I haven't seen him in a while though. Boom. Bye.